I'm Dan and welcome to Polar Currency and video number 3. This video takes a deep dive into one single banknote, the Series 1891 $2 silver certificate, and will definitely address those mutton chops because wow! And how could I not feature this banknote, being a total homer from Minnesota? As a collector, I certainly appreciate the many ways to collect paper currency, but I see things a bit differently. For me, collecting all the signatures for any given series isn't as important as to who actually signed the banknote. Don't get me wrong, I've completed 2 small-size signature collections and I'm working on a third. What captivates me is who is on the note and why. The Series 1891 $2 silver certificate is a perfect example. It was the second series of the $2 silver certificate issued by the U.S.Treasury, replacing the Series 1886 Hancock Note. The 1891 series was a short run and issued from 1891 to 1895 and was replaced by the educational $2 silver certificate in 1896. As a single date series issued only for 5 years, it's gotten lost between 2 highly collectible banknotes. The front features the portrait of William Windom, a Republican politician from Minnesota. He was elected to the House of Representatives in 1859 as part of the first congressional delegation from Minnesota, which had just become a state in 1858. He served 5 terms in the House and then was appointed to the U.S. Senate, filling the vacancy due to the death of Daniel S. Norton, serving 3 non-consecutive terms from 1870 to 1881. He was then appointed as Secretary of the Treasury by President James Garfield in 1881. He went on to serve 2 non-consecutive terms between 1881 and 1891 for 2 more presidents, Chester Arthur and Benjamin Harrison. Born in 1827, Windom moved from Belmont County, Ohio to the Minnesota Territory in 1855 and established a law practice in Winona, a southeastern Minnesota city located in the Bluff Country on the Mississippi River. There is some irony that Windom was placed on a silver certificate because he was an early advocate of the gold standard. He would have been better suited for a gold certificate and certainly had more national notoriety, or at least was less obscure than Silas Wright, a politician from New York who died in 1847. According to the Treasury Department, Windom advocated the gold standard and was a key proponent for the compromise that resulted in the Sherman Silver Purchase Act of 1890. The unforeseen consequences of that act depleted the U.S. gold reserves that resulted in the Panic of 1893. As senator, he chaired a special committee on transportation routes to the western seaboard and was a proponent of expansion. Windom's expansionist beliefs combined with his Minnesota roots made him sympathetic to the new western states' desire for a currency backed by hard money. He was also the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, a very powerful position. According to the book Windom, the Man in School, author Robert P. Herrick states that Windom was a trusted friend and advisor of President Lincoln. This is a personal note from Lincoln to Windom advising him to see the Reverend Bishop Henry Whipple, who was the first Episcopal Bishop of Minnesota, who gained a reputation as a humanitarian and an advocate for Native Americans. Okay, just kidding, I'm really not going to go that deep. It was all about the handwritten note from Lincoln, and that's just really cool. On January 29th in 1891, Windom gave a speech to the New York Board of Trade at the famous Delmonico's Steakhouse in New York City. Moments after finishing, he sat down, slumped over, fell to the floor, and died, apparently of heart disease. Windom's passing did carry national importance. The book Windom, the Man in School states, amid honors rarely accorded except to a dead president, the body was borne to Washington by order of President Harrison. The U.S. Treasury and all its branches were draped in mourning for 30 days, and you literally needed a ticket to get into his funeral. His untimely death, some national notoriety, and that he was a former Secretary of the Treasury, most likely were the reasons why he was placed on the 1891 $2 silver certificate. For a politician from a small western state, Windom had his share of memorials. The United States Revenue Cutter Service, which eventually became the U.S. Coast Guard, named the cutter USRC Windom after him in 1896 that served during the Spanish-American War. The U.S. Navy named a Liberty ship, SS William Windom, after him, and that ship served in World War II. 2 parks still exist today in Minneapolis and Winona, Minnesota that bear his name. He also has a township in Moore County, Minnesota named after him. Western Minnesota Seminary College in Montevideo, Minnesota was renamed to Windom Institute following his death in 1891. Windom even had his likeness appear on cigar bands. I mean, this guy had some national credentials. The city of Windom, Minnesota, the county seat of Cottonwood County, was named after him in 1871 when he was a sitting U.S. Senator.
Because I am from Minnesota and Windom's basically in my backyard, I had to go check out the namesake of our Series 1891 $2 silver certificate.
So I stopped by the Cottonwood County Historical Society located in Windom for some research. Thanks very much to Linda for having me and for letting me go through your William Windom file. If you're ever in southwestern Minnesota, check out the Cottonwood County Historical Society Exhibit Hall. You'll be impressed. I know I was. And we're not done with the memorials yet. Windom also had a 14,000-foot high mountain named after him. Windom Peak is the highest summit of the Needle Mountains range of the Rocky Mountains located within the San Juan National Forest in Colorado. Now that's just impressive. I mean, a mountain? Alright, random worthless trivia fact is that theater, film, and television character actor, also named William Windom, was the great-grandson of the former politician from Minnesota. His career spanned over 50 years and is one of those actors you certainly recognize, but you don't know who they are. Alright, back to currency. The Series 1891 $2 silver certificate is not touted as a classic, most likely because it was caught in between eras of U.S. currency design. The traditional, I'll call it Victorian period, aspects on the left and the corner denominations clash with the old National Bank circus-type fonts used on the right. The reverse design is typical of the intricate and ornate motifs used at the time. They were part art, part anti-counterfeiting, and part provider of legal information. Many large-size banknotes at the time even printed the penalty for counterfeiting on the reverse. 15 years imprisonment and hard labor? Ouch! But then again, you probably deserved it. The Series 1891 $2 banknote reverse has the nickname as the bow tie note because of its uniquely shaped design. In the late 1880s, design policy was changing to show more white space on the reverse, revealing more of the blue and red threads embedded in the paper, which was another anti-counterfeiting measure. The skill level of the engravers at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing has to be appreciated when looking closely at the borders of the Series 1891 $2 silver certificate. This detailed artistry was engraved and printed in a space of roughly 3/8 of an inch. It also printed crystal clear and on a mass volume scale. Very impressive.
Sidebar here. I will say this for Windom. He had a hell of a pair of mutton chops. It appears he sported these babies for over 30 years. He had them back in 1865 when he was in the House of Representatives. When it comes to late 19th century facial hair, that was well represented on U.S. currency, so Windom was right in step. I shouldn't go any farther with this, but I just can't help myself.
Men's facial hair in the mid-1800s drastically changed from the clean-shaven faces of our founding fathers to Lincoln being the first president with a beard adding a chin strap after the 1860 election. The trend in the beards only got bigger. 9 of the next 11 presidents had facial hair. William Howard Taft was the last president brandishing facial hair with his handlebar mustache. Around the late 1890s, beards slowly became mustaches and slowly went out of style, and by the 1920s, only kings, anarchists, and dictators donned facial hair of any kind. And of course, there is a bit of weird related political history to facial hair. There was a small amount of speculation that one of the reasons Thomas Dewey lost the 1944 and 48 elections to FDR and Harry Truman was because he had a mustache. In a New York Times Sunday Magazine article in August 1944, Edith Ephron comments on Dewey's mustache. It's Chaplin pathetic, Hitler psychopathic, Gable debonair, and Lulier wacky. And I don't know what Lulier is doing, but it's not what you think. So it was a thing. And sidebar to the sidebar, Thomas Dewey always freaked me out because my paternal grandfather is a dead ringer for him. My grandfather probably thought he looked more like Clark Gable. Who knows? But it's a good story. End of sidebar. My Series 1891 silver certificate maybe grades out at a good 6 at best, but it still has eye appeal. It's missing some pieces and has some sort of green smudge on the right, maybe a burn hole right there too. There were 2 different signature combinations for the Series 1891. I'm only going to concentrate on the note that I have, which is Friedberg number 245. There's also a 246.
The 245 signatures are the Register of the Treasury, William Rosecrans, and Enos Nebaker, Treasurer of the United States. The heavy folds on the back make it a little tough to read the legal obligation, but the level of engraving detail on that bow tie ornamentation just amazes me, even in this condition. As I said earlier, the 1891 $2 silver certificate gets lost between two classic banknotes. The 1886 series with Civil War hero General Winfield Scott Hancock, who by the way ran for president in 1880 and narrowly lost to James Garfield. The other bookend $2 silver certificate and one of the trio of arguably the most beautiful U.S. currency designed is, of course, the 1896 Educational Series. Truly an iconic banknote. As to my Series 1891 $2 silver certificate signatures, well, there's some history there, too. Starting with William Rosecrans, who was the Register of the U.S. Treasury from 1885 to 1893, serving Presidents Grover Cleveland and Benjamin Harrison.
Chasing some bureaucratic history here, I had no idea what a Register of the Treasury was. Well, after working the Google machine, I found out quite a bit. The Register of the Treasury was an officer of the U.S. Treasury Department that signed almost all U.S. banks from 1862 to 1914.
Beginning with the 1914 Federal Reserve notes, the signature was changed to the Secretary of the Treasury, but the Register's signature continued to appear on the last large-size notes issued in the 1920s. The office of the Register was later assigned to the Office of the Commissioner of the Public Debt, later the Public Debt Service, and abolished completely in 1956. Back to Rosecrans, who was born in Ohio, graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 1842, and reached the rank of Major General serving the Union in the Civil War. Rosecrans had a checkered Civil War career mostly in the Western theater. He had a string of victories, but after the brutal loss at the Battle of Chickamauga, General Ulysses S. Grant relieved him of command, but he remained in the Army until 1867. In 1869, he moved to California and was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, serving from 1881 to 1885, before being appointed to office of the Register. Enos Nebaker served as the 18th Treasurer of the United States from 1891 to 1893 under President Benjamin Harrison. Nebaker was born in Covington, Indiana, was a banker in the family business, served as draft supervisor during the Civil War, and was elected Auditor of Fountain County, Indiana in 1870, holding the office for 4 years. This is the only elected office Nebaker held prior to his appointment as U.S. Treasurer. According to the book Men of Progress, Indiana, Nebaker was a prominent Republican, a delegate to the 1880 Republican National Convention, and FYI, that's as national as he gets prior to his appointment. During the presidential election of 1888, he campaigned passionately for Benjamin Harrison, also from Indiana. Go Hoosiers! Harrison won the contested election over Grover Cleveland. Nebaker was surprised that in 1891, Harrison asked him to fill the remaining term for treasurer and urged his acceptance. He took the office and served admirably and went back to Indiana after Harrison lost the 1892 election to Grover Cleveland.
That completes video number 3 and the deep dive into the Series 1891 $2 silver certificate. You never really know where history can take you, and it's just amazing that an almost forgotten banknote can still represent so many stories. Hit the thumbs up button if you like what you see, and feel free to leave a comment. I sincerely appreciate your time and thanks for watching.